Imagine a platform where people from different places and time periods could speak to each other. A place where texts could be linked to one another, where intertextuality, subtle trolling, and virtual communities were woven throughout. Sounds like the internet. But what we're actually describing is the Talmud. There are 3 things you should know about the Talmud. 1, it literally translates to study, but it's also known as the Gemara, which also means study but in Aramaic. 2, it's a collection of Jewish law, biblical commentary, and mystical stories. 3, it's a mess. Open up a law book and you'll see a clear order or sequence. Principles laid out, followed by real-world applications. Similarly, biblical commentary should be organized based on chapter and verse. Yet somehow, the Talmud is not. Sure, there are general topics to each book, known as a tractate, and each tractate is divided into one of 6 orders, known as Siddharim. But inside each page, the underlying structure is a maze. There are digressions, seemingly irrelevant tangents, and random discussions. So why is the seminal collective body of Jewish ideas written in such a confusing way? The Talmud itself may offer a hint. It's always exciting when a movie references its title.
Fantastic Mr. Fox.
The right stuff.
Tough guys don't dance. Point Break.
Vanilla Sky.
Good morning, Vietnam!
In a rare moment, the Talmud makes reference to its own character. In search of a verse in the Torah that encapsulates the distinctiveness of the Talmud, it finds a verse in Lamentations that illuminates the essence of Talmudic learning. "You placed me in darkness among the dead," Rabbi Yirmiyah says. This is the Babylonian Talmud. There are so many uplifting and optimistic verses in the Torah. Why did the Talmud connect itself to one so bleak and dark? Karl Jaspers, a renowned philosopher, coined a term called the axial age. This was the moment, roughly around the first millennium, when society moved away from a conception of God who speaks to society through prophecy to a notion of godliness that emerges through the self. What is new about this age is that man becomes conscious of being as a whole, of himself and his limitations. He experiences the terror of the world and his own powerlessness. He asks radical questions. Face to face with the void, he strives for liberation and redemption. By consciously recognizing his limits, he sets himself the highest goals. He experiences absoluteness in the depths of selfhood and in the lucidity of transcendence. It is a world without clear prophecy, open miracles, and the obvious voice of God calling from the heavens. In many ways, it is the world we still live in today. And it was this world that the Talmud was preparing for. In Lamentations, we find the verse the Talmud uses to describe itself. It details the destruction of the first temple. The temple stood not just as an impressive architectural structure in Jerusalem, but more importantly as the centralized source of religious meaning. Certainty and confidence in a direct mandate from God emanated from its walls. The destruction of the temple meant we could no longer rely on an external source of proof and inspiration. Now, man would be tasked with the burden of uncovering God's voice within himself and discovering spiritual meaning in a world full of contradictions, questions, and conflict. In this new world following the axial age, a new way of thinking emerged to cultivate the skills for constructing meaning without a clearly articulated prophetic voice. And that is the essence of the Talmud, a reflection of a world absent of obvious meaning and sequential structure. The Talmud structure may seem like it lacks focus or a rigid plan, but that's actually not a mistake. Its desultory nature directly reflects the complications of a world in exile. Through wrestling with uncertainty, we build the resilience for redemption, and through our doubts, we forge our own path. In the 1920s, the Orthodox Jewish community began a program called Daf Yomi. Every day around the world, Jews learn one page of Talmud. It takes 7.5 years to complete the entire work. That's 2,711 pages. The celebration when they complete the text was once held in Madison Square Garden, but that became too small. Now it's held in MetLife Stadium, better known as the home of the New York Giants and Jets. What continues to animate the Talmud's relevance? Yuval Noah Harari, best-selling author of the book Sapiens, explains it this way in his book 21 Lessons for the 21st Century.
As robots and AI push humans out of the job market, the ultra-Orthodox Jews may come to be seen as the model for the future, rather than as a fossil from the past. Not that everyone will become Orthodox Jews and go to yeshivas to study the Talmud, but in the lives of all people, the quest for meaning and community might eclipse the quest for a job.
In some ways, the Talmud, with all its complications and uncertainty, is even more relevant in today's world. It's basically the Jewish internet, storing conversations, ideas, debates, insults, and direction for over 1,000 years. As our online universe expands, the Talmud resonates even more. Jonathan Rosen, in his book The Talmud and the Internet, explains it this way. The Talmud offered a virtual home for an uprooted culture and grew out of the Jewish need to pack civilization into words and wander out into the world. The Talmud became essential for Jewish survival once the temple, God's pre-Talmud home, was destroyed, and the temple practices, those bodily rituals of blood and fire and physical atonement, could no longer be performed. When the Jewish people lost their home, the land of Israel, and God lost his, the temple, then a new way of being was devised, and Jews became the people of the book and not the people of the temple or the land. They became the people of the book because they had no place else to live. That bodily loss is frequently overlooked, but for me it lies at the heart of the Talmud, for all its plenitude. The internet, which we are continually told binds us all together, nevertheless engenders in me a similar sense of diaspora, a feeling of being everywhere and nowhere. Where else but in the middle of diaspora do you need a homepage? And inside each page, the Talmud provides the tools to build a meaning and find a home, wherever you are.